UFC Fight Night, Reyes versus Prochazka, aka UFC Vegas 25. We are back with another UFC prediction and analysis video. He goes by the name of Zan. I go by the name of Harris. We go by the name of Boxing MMA Picks. And as usual, here on Boxing MMA Picks, we're here to give you our fight by fight breakdown, fight by fight analysis, let you know which fights are worth it from a betting perspective, which fights you want to be avoiding, which underdogs perhaps will give you some good value. And hey, if you stick around to the end, you might even get some parlay action from us. There's 12 fights on this card. UFC Vegas 25 going back to the Apex after having 15,000 fans at UFC 261. We have a lot to cover here. So let's start with, as usual, our prelims. 6 fights on the prelims. Getting into fight number 1, we have Luke Saunders versus Felipe Colares. I'll start as usual breaking this fight down. I'll start with Luke Saunders. Southpaw is a pretty decent all-around fighter. Good MMA striking. I think he has some pop in his hands as well, especially that left hand in the southpaw stance. So really look out for that, especially going up against the orthodox fighter in Felipe Colares. If you watch his fight versus Nate Maness, I'm talking Luke Saunders versus Nate Maness here. Twice in the first round, twice in the second round. Luke Saunders touched him. Luke Saunders had him hurt. Luke Saunders had him a bit wobbled. So we definitely know that he has that kind of power in his hands. Likes the body kick with the back leg. He'll definitely throw some calf kicks in there as well. Pretty decent clinch. He does have some wrestling skills as well. If you watch his fight versus Renan Barão, he took those shots, right? So it's a question of, does he have a chin? But then again, you watch the Nate Maness fight and you kind of get a different result there. Kind of suspect submission defense. Again, watch that Nate Maness fight. It was really only Nate Maness's second sub attempt in general that kind of ended that fight. But again, Saunders was hurt at some point in that fight, and he's been inconsistent. I mean, if you look at his record in the UFC, he's 3-4 in the UFC since 2016. So not really going to be a fighter that's going to string together wins for you. Not really the best footwork on the feet either. I mean, with power comes lack of movement sometimes, and he is a bit flat-footed, right? So, but to that point, he'll control the center of the octagon. He'll put on pressure, and that could potentially look good in the eyes of the judges. Flipping it over to Felipe Colares, he's 1-2 in the UFC. So, you see there his record 9-2. Clearly, the UFC has been a test for him, to say the least. A very kick-heavy attack, solid clinch, pretty offensive clinch with knees. In terms of his ground game, I think he has decent top control. You'll see some activity in that, good ground and pound, positional changes. Definitely knows what he's doing on top. Doesn't really have the best takedown defense, in my opinion, although he does a decent job getting back up to his feet. Watch his fight versus Montel Jackson, who was a bigger fighter, who was a pure wrestler in some ways. He was able to get back to his feet multiple times in that fight. Brazilian fighter, he's going to have jiu-jitsu. I've seen him more so attempt the submissions when he's in compromised positions. So that does concern me a little bit. And we'll actually see how Saunders defends that, because again, I don't feel he has the best submission defense. That Montel Jackson fight was very interesting though, right? Felipe Colares was very hittable in that fight on the feet. He showed a good chin though. I mean, you watch that first round, Montel Jackson hit him 15, 20 clean shots towards the end of that round. And although he was wobbled on almost every single one of them, he never went down. So that's either heart or chin or some combination of both. This is a tough one to start the card off. I will say this. I'm slightly leaning in the favor of Luke Saunders. I think if he can avoid any silly submissions, for lack of a better word, I do think he should get the job done here. And I'm basing this on him having the better stand-up, in my opinion. Colares only has 25% takedown accuracy in 3 UFC fights. So I don't necessarily see him effectively getting this fight to the ground. So I think it stays on the feet. I think Saunders will get the best of him on the feet, and I think he'll pull out a close one here.
Yeah, this fight is probably one of the harder fights on this card. When you look at Colares, you're looking at the younger fighter, the taller fighter. He can easily stay at a range and just throw leg kicks out and win rounds that way. And this guy Colares, he hasn't fought since January 25th, 2020, when he got so almost like a year and a half or so. So he hasn't fought in a while. That Montel Jackson fight where he got those killer instant combos, like unreal. He stood up. That definitely tells me this guy is hard to put away. When you look at Felipe Colares' body of work, he lost to Montel Jackson, beat Domingo Pilarte in a fight that ultimately could have went either way. Geraldo de Freitas, he lost a unanimous decision, and then before that, he's fighting a bunch of guys that haven't done anything in MMA. So like he fought a lot of low-level guys, and when he stepped up, yeah, he lost twice, and he had one questionable win. But again, he got the win, but it was a close fight that could have went either way. Now, when you look at Luke Saunders, it's kind of hard to pick Luke Saunders because we can't forget this guy lost to Nate Maness, Ronnie Yaya, Yuri Alcantara. All these fights, he was probably winning these fights up until that moment, and then the fight was finished. So if the mistake he made in those fights, he didn't make those mistakes, he was winning those fights. Obviously, fights are 3 rounds, so he wasn't able to maintain that body of work throughout the fight, and he got caught either in a submission or he got knocked out, or he got dropped and then he got submitted against Maness. So I'm kind of worried taking Luke Saunders in this fight because he's been here before where he looks like the better guy in the ring. He is the better guy at that time, and then all of a sudden, watch the Nate Maness fight. All of a sudden, one shot, the fight's turned around. He was winning that fight. And Felipe Colares, I would think that Luke Saunders I would think that Nate Maness is a bit better than Colares. I would think that. So the fact that he was beating Maness, though, tells me that he definitely has a good shot against Colares. It's going to be hard to put Colares away. I'm reluctant, but I'm going to have to take Luke Saunders as well. I think that one thing I noticed in that fight against Felipe Colares versus Montel Jackson was that left hand. Montel Jackson, I believe, is a southpaw. That left hand was open all day. I don't think he missed the left hand all fight. And we know Luke Saunders is a southpaw, so that left straight's going to be there. Yeah, he has some power. Hopefully he puts him away because, as you know, as the fight goes on, he could be winning the fight and then one mistake and he loses. So I'm going to reluctantly take Luke Saunders. I'm not going to put any coin on this. But yeah, Luke Saunders is my pick here. Higher level of competition. He's looked good against a higher level of competition. And yeah, he's stepping down here in competition. So he should get this fight. But again, it is Luke Saunders.
All right, sounds good. So unanimous decision between the two of us going with Luke Saunders. But I mean, again, with some caution on him as a fighter overall. So I probably don't put any coin on that either. And for all the listeners, you probably should not either. Let's move on to fight number 2. In that case, we have Andreas Michailidis versus KB Bhullar. I'll go very quickly through this one. I mean, KB Bhullar, you look at him, he suffered his first loss of his career in his UFC debut. We really saw what a difference in level of competition did for Bhullar. I mean, he looked somewhat green in that fight, I'll be completely honest with you. Looked low IQ as soon as he got touched. Otherwise, I mean, if I'm sort of breaking down his game, he is a switch stance fighter. You know, look for him to have the height and the reach on most of his opponents. Obviously, in this fight as well, 4 inches on height, 3 inches on reach. He's described as a kung fu style fighter, so look for that kind of tall, you know, almost bouncy stand up out of him. More of a methodical type of stand-up. You'll see him try to pick his shots. You'll see him, you know, try to use different angles and different things such as shuffle kicks and different techniques to kind of keep the opponent at distance. But, I mean, ultimately, I'll keep this short. He's not somebody I can really trust at all. Questionable chin, questionable heart in some ways. If you watch what Tom Breeze did to him, the first moment Tom Breeze made contact, you know, he wasn't really willing to kind of continue that fight. We don't know how hurt he was, but nonetheless, you know, didn't really show an effort in that. Looking at Andreas Michailidis now, he lost his debut versus Modestas Bukauskas. But that fight was at 205, right? He is a 185 fighter. This is a 185 middleweight fight. So look for Michailidis to be in much better shape in this fight and sort of fill out the weight class a lot better than he did at 205 in his debut. Decent overall stand-up with him. I think he's a pretty patient striker. He looks to pick his shots. He goes after the body effectively. I've seen both punches and kicks to the opponent's body, so that usually tells you the striking IQ of a fighter. And I think for Michailidis, it is pretty decent. A really sharp calf kick that can definitely be a weapon for him, especially against a taller fighter like KB Bhullar. Kind of heavy on his feet. He's not the quickest laterally. That could make him hittable for somebody like KB Bhullar, who again can use his length in this fight. And again, if you watch the Andreas Michailidis fight versus Modestas Bukauskas, he had a lot of moments in that fight. Arguably, he was winning that first round until the very end, the last 5 or 10 seconds of the round. He went to shoot for a takedown, really just to seal the round. And Bukauskas hit him with, a number of elbows to effectively take him out right as the bell was ringing. But again, if I'm looking at that fight outside of those 10 seconds, he did look pretty decent. And I think we're going to sort of see the same thing in this fight. We're going to say Andreas Michailidis have the advantage on the feet. The difference is that I don't think KB Bhullar is Modestas Bukauskas. So I do think Michailidis will have his way in this one. I don't trust putting coin on this because it is, relatively speaking, 2 lower level fighters. But I do think Michailidis gets the job done here.
Yeah, I'm fairly confident here. I'm like Andreas Michailidis will get this done. KB Bhullar, he's fighting out of Unified MMA. That's kind of a new promotion in Alberta, one of the newer ones in Canada. If you don't know, Alberta is one of the provinces here. But KB Bhullar, look at his body of work. He hasn't fought anybody over there. Anyone. Matt Dwyer, Cody Cron, Derek Boyle, a bunch of old guys, 4-8, Corey Atkinson, 5-8, Jason Gorney, 1-3, Simon Scher. This guy hasn't fought anyone. And when he fought a UFC level fighter, he got knocked out by a jab, right? Or he got knocked down by a jab. So I don't think he is UFC level. I know the UFC is probably trying to tap into the Indian fan base. But I don't think this is the guy. I don't think KB Bhullar is the guy. And Michailidis, I think he's more well-rounded. I think this is his type of. I think this is a matchup for him. Even though he has the height disadvantage, he can kick legs. Like, this guy has decent striking. He can mix in the wrestling if he has to. He has fought fighters that have decent records. He's fought 9-3, 9-1, 7-1, 14-5, 7-1. So I'm going with Michailidis here, and he had a good showing in all those fights. So even in his loss against Modestas Bukauskas, as you mentioned, he had a really good showing in that fight. So yeah, that's my pick. I'm going to go Michailidis, and I'm pretty confident here. I don't think Bhullar is UFC level, and I think Michailidis is a good addition to the UFC. So I'm going to go Michailidis here, and I think he could win this fight. He likely gets the stoppage. Remember, a jab finished Bhullar, so I'm going to go Michailidis here to win this fight.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with him possibly getting that stoppage there on that one. And again, I do think he wins the fight. So let's move on to fight number 3. In that case, we have Loma Lookboonmee versus Sam Hughes. Why don't you kick this one off? Tell me how you feel about this fight.
I'm going to be quick again on this one, man. Honestly, Loma is a problem. She's going to win this fight. If this fight stays standing, she is not losing this fight. Her striking is really high level. She's one of the better female strikers in the whole UFC. Her Muay Thai is sharp. She has disgusting elbows, right? She's going to go out there and mark up Hughes's face. Hughes is going to have to get this to the ground. I don't think she's going to be able to do that. I think she's going to depend on her stand-up and think it's good enough. But if you've seen her fight against Angela Hill, Loma held her own and did really well against Angela Hill, who had a really big reach advantage. And Angela Hill is becoming one of the better female strikers as well. So I think there's levels, and I think Loma is just on a higher level at this point. I know she's coming from the kickboxing or the Muay Thai game. I know she's rounding out her game with the grappling, so she should be able to keep this on the feet. And yeah, if it's on the feet, there's no way she loses this fight. So I like Loma in this spot.
Yeah, you know what? I'll keep it short as well. I completely agree with this. I think she has the huge, not the huge, but I think she does have a big striking advantage with that Muay Thai background that she has. And I think, in terms of Sam Hughes, she looks okay. She has amateur kickboxing experience, so let's not, completely undermine her striking ability. But sort of look no further than the Sam Hughes versus Tisha Torres fight. I know Tisha Torres is a bit more kickboxing style, whereas Loma Lookboonmee is going to be more Muay Thai style. But that Tisha Torres fight is a bit of a barometer as to sort of what I'm expecting in this one. Um, Tisha Torres pieced her up. She was doing Dragon Ball Z combos on Sam Hughes, man. I mean, she just wasn't quick enough, Sam Hughes. Her footwork wasn't quick enough. Her head movement wasn't quick enough. I'm looking for Loma Lookboonmee to sort of piece her up as well. Loma's short. She has a strong Thai clinch. I think that's going to work in her favor in terms of giving her that takedown defense that she needs. And Sam Hughes, I think, is in for a little bit too much here. So I like this pick as well. Loma Lookboonmee. Let's move on to fight number 4. In that case, we have Kamaka III versus TJ Brown. This is a super tough one. Why don't you tell me how you feel about it?
Yeah, this is a somewhat tough fight because we're gonna have to figure out what kind of what TJ Brown is coming out here. If TJ Brown comes out here, gets some takedowns, he definitely can make this fight interesting. But I don't think that's gonna happen. I think that this is a spot for Kai Kamaka. I know that TJ Brown is likely fighting for his job. Yes, he's on a 2-fight losing streak. He lost to Jordan Griffith, lost to Danny Chavez. Kamaka is actually more well-rounded than both of those fighters. Now, I'm not saying he's better than them, but he is more well-rounded. He can keep this fight standing. He has some wrestling. And I believe Kai Kamaka has the better striking. He's good with the left hand. He's good with the right hand. Good kicks. Good with range. He likes to march his opponents down as well sometimes in the fights. And he will go for a takedown himself. So I like this spot for Kai Kamaka. I know that when he fought someone that's fighting later on the card, Jonathan Pearce, he was looking good. Then what happened was Jonathan Pearce is that type of fighter where when you get tired, he doesn't get tired. Like he has a ridiculous pace, ridiculous cardio, and he broke Kamaka in that fight, right? So in this fight though, I don't think TJ Brown can do that. I think that Kai Kamaka is going to have the better striking. I think he's going to be able to keep this on the feet. And I think he's going to win a comfortable decision here. I actually like Kamaka in this spot here. He should get this done. So Kai Kamaka is my pick.
Yeah, I really like Kai Kamaka in this one as well. His takedown defense does have some question marks because if you watch his Tony Kelly fight, good takedown defense, good clinch knowledge, did all the right things in that fight. And then if you watch that Jonathan Pearce fight, to your point, maybe he just broke Kamaka mentally or maybe even physically in terms of the cardio because sort of as that fight was going on, Kai Kamaka was really starting to show some suspect takedown defense in that fight. To your point of wondering which TJ Brown are we going to get, I am wondering which takedown defense of Kai Kamaka we're going to get, because if he can stuff the takedowns the way that I'm sort of expecting him to, then to your point, I do think he's better on the feet. I do think he's the more well-rounded fighter. They can both land takedowns, so they can both go for that sort of extra umph to win a round. I just think Kai Kamaka is the slightly better fighter overall in this one. And although it in some ways can go either way, I like Kamaka in this spot. I do trust him a little bit more in this spot. Although TJ Brown is fighting for his job, you kind of have to think Kai Kamaka is doing the same thing, right? I mean, he is coming off of a loss. He probably won't be cut, but he would move to 8-4, and then really, what does the UFC sort of care to do with him? So I think Kai Kamaka is going to come out just as hungry as TJ Brown in this one, and I think he's going to get the job done. Let's move on to fight number 5. In that case, we have Gabriel Benítez versus Kai Kamaka's last opponent, Jonathan Pearce. I'll break this one down. Benítez, he's a southpaw, decent jab out of him, decent lateral movement. He kind of has a sneaky one too, so really look out for that in the fight. It's pretty sharp, it's pretty accurate, it's pretty quick. He likes that Thai kick with the back leg. He'll throw the high kick with it as well. Showed his kicks very early in his fight. If you watch his last fight versus Justin James, I mean, James was just sort of in over his head on the striking. And Benítez really showed that sort of kick heavy attack should he want to, in terms of an option for him. He has solid defense, some pop in his hands as well. Striking defense, of course, is what I'm referring to. He will diversify his strikes. He'll throw, a left hook to the body, as an example, again, coming up from the southpaw position. So has that diversity in his striking. And because he is pretty decent defensively as a striker, that makes him a pretty good counterpuncher. And he can definitely punch moving backwards as well. Good striking IQ, pretty dynamic on the feet. I like a lot of the things that I see from him on the feet. You see, he averages less than a quarter of a takedown a fight. So that's definitely not somewhere that I anticipate him going at all. Jonathan Pearce, on the other hand, I mean, kind of a bouncy stand-up style. He does fight tall. He does use his reach. You'll see here, although the reach isn't at an advantage, he does have a height advantage of 4 inches. So that's something that he'll definitely use. Front kicks, push kicks, if he's facing any kind of pressure. Decent boxing. I wouldn't say it's amazing by any means, but he's definitely willing to engage. Showed his wrestling on Dana White Contender Series. Definitely showed his wrestling in his win versus Kai Kamaka as well. And I mean, again, looking at two fighters that can kind of fight going backwards, he does move back maybe a little bit more naturally than he does coming forward, but he can very much keep it in the pocket. He can very much close distance. We saw that in the Kai Kamaka fight again versus someone who has pretty decent striking in Kai Kamaka. Bit of a predictable jab, but I do like that he'll use it, and I do like that it works, right? This fight, to me, is not easy by any means. I think the odds actually should be a lot closer, regardless of which side you're leaning on in this one. Again, we saw Pearce look really impressive versus Kai Kamaka, who was supposed to be a better striker. I think similarly here, Gabriel Benítez is supposed to be a better striker. But what Jonathan Pearce showed me in that Kamaka fight, in some ways, is what I expect him to show me in this fight as well. Good diverse striking, improved striking from the fight before. 13 months prior to that Kai Kamaka fight, Jonathan Pearce, he got pieced up on the feet versus Joe Lozon. So, definitely improved. He took a whole year off, 13 months off, came back with improved striking, in my opinion. And stylistically, I think this Benítez fight, again, will have some of the same components. I do think, though, the key factor here and the key differentiator in this fight is Pearce's ability to wrestle. Benítez has 56% takedown defense in 10 UFC fights. Again, as I mentioned, he only averages 0.17 takedown per fight. That tells me that, again, he's not going to have the advantage on the ground. At least I don't think so. And I do anticipate Jonathan Pearce using that. So I'm going to go with Jonathan Pearce. I'm going to make an underdog call here. Probably the only underdog of the undercard that I see having a shot here. Again, stay tuned to the end of the video to kind of get more info on that. But yeah, I'm going to go with the underdog here. I'm going Jonathan Pearce.
Yeah, I see why, man. I think this is a 50-50 fight, just based on the type of match we have, not based on the skills of the fighter. I think Benítez is the better fighter, but I think styles make fights. And stylistically, if you look at the Benítez fight versus Barzola, I know that was a couple years ago. But in the first round, Benítez likely won the first round. And then the second round, Benítez is slowing down. But Barzola is pushing a pace, and he's getting takedowns. Third round, more of the same, pushing a pace, getting takedowns. And Barzola won that fight, right? So Benítez kind of got outworked in that fight. And his cardio showed in that fight, because it was a fight where he was taken down and he had to defend grappling. First round, again, he was good, but as the fight went on, now, Jonathan Pearce, he might not be the best fighter, but one thing he has one of the best engines in the UFC. And I'll say that. I know I only seen the fight on the Contender Series, the fight on his first fight in the UFC versus Kamaka, but that engine is ridiculous. As the fight was going on, it literally felt like it was the first round for this guy. In the second round, third round, this guy was not stopping. So I can see him breaking Benítez. But I'm going to tell people, I wouldn't bet this fight. I would sit back, enjoy this fight. To me, this is a dogger pass as far as betting goes. It's a dogger pass for me. But I'm going to go with Benítez. I believe working at AKA. He's fighting Jonathan Pearce, who isn't the best fighter, but he does have a tank. He does have an engine. But at AKA, he has all the wrestlers in the world over there. Those guys can formulate a game plan. And I think that being in that camp is going to help him with the grappling component, keep us on the feet. And I think he turned a corner. I know it's only Justin James, but in that Justin James fight, he looked really sharp. He looked really sharp. And let's not forget that when he fought Sadiq Youssef, I believe he dropped him. He dropped him in one of the rounds, right? So he's looking sharper. So I think this is the spot that he should win. Keeps this on the feet, keeps the grappling at bay, avoids the takedowns, and I think he could win this fight. But again, I wouldn't bet this fight. I'm going with who I think is the better fighter. But I think matchup-wise, stylistically, this is a 50-50 fight. We got a guy that can go to the ground, can take you down, can last 3 rounds against a guy that we've seen fade in the second and third round against someone going for takedowns. So you got to be careful when it comes to this fight as far as betting goes. But for the channel, I'm going to put my name down on Gabriel Benítez. I just think he's turning a corner. He looked really good in that James fight. I know it's only Justin James, but he looked really sharp. The leg kicks, I think he's going to start them early against Jonathan Pearce, slow down what he's going to be trying to do later in the fight. I think the leg kicks are going to be massive. I think Benítez has some of the best leg kicks in the whole MMA game right now. So I'm going to bank on him staying on the outside, outstriking Pearce, and avoiding the ground.
Yeah, and I could definitely see a lot of reasons for Benítez to win this fight as well, but I think you described it perfectly from an actual money perspective. Underdog or pass, I'm definitely passing on this one as well, so I'm not interested in throwing any coin on this. Let's move on to fight number 6 and see how you feel about this. The final fight of the prelims, we have Randa Markos versus Luana Pinheiro. How do you feel?
Yeah, this fight, this is a good fight. This is a good fight to find out where Pinheiro's at. Randa Markos is a good litmus test to let us know if Pinheiro is the next Brazilian star. I like Pinheiro. I like her style. I know that she is a brown belt, I think, in jiu-jitsu, but she is a black belt in judo. And she's won judo championships. She's won some titles in judo. So she's definitely aware of the grappling. And in this fight, she definitely has a striking advantage. So like the striking is 100% Luana. Now, the concern in this fight is we know Randa Markos. She's 10-10. So from a gambler's point of view, you can't pick Randa Markos. She wins half her fights. And now she's fighting someone that has grappling knowledge and is a better striker and is younger. So I'm going to go with Pinheiro here because I think that judo's underappreciated in MMA. I think that with the judo, it's kind of like a Greco-Roman with the hips and the control against the cage. It's comparable. I think that judo and Greco-Roman wrestlers have that really good stand-up grappling against the cage, and they just are just strong in that position because that's what they do. They work the hips and the upper body. So I like Luana in this fight. I think she can be the more physical, stronger fighter here. She 100% is the better striker, and she knocks people out as well. So I like her in this spot because we know Markos' only way to win this is to get this to the ground. But she's fighting someone that is a judo black belt that has competed in tournaments, and someone that is from Brazil, and they're a brown belt in jiu-jitsu. That's enough for me. So I'm going to go with the newcomer here to win this fight, Luana.
Yeah, and I'll keep mine short. I'm definitely going with Luana Pinheiro as well. I like the judo comments that you made because I do personally feel judo's kind of a hidden treasure in the UFC right now. And I think it really allows a fighter to have good takedown defense, good balance, and some sneaky takedowns of their own that a lot of fighters don't really expect. You mentioned everything that you mentioned in terms of being enough for why you'd want to pick Pinheiro on this. The only additional thing I'll add to this is that, of course, Randa Markos, we know the only way for her to win is to try to bring the fight to the ground. She averages 1.23 takedowns per fight at 28% takedown accuracy. If that's your only way to win a fight and those are your respective takedown statistics, I just can't do it. I don't see any reason to put money on Randa Markos in this one. Again, the only potential question mark would be, as we've seen with some respective newcomers into the UFC, Are they ready for this UFC level? Or more importantly, will they perform at the level that they need to perform to really come up with a clear-cut decision? Because again, that's the part that maybe is your biggest X factor in this fight is the performance of Pinheiro. But there's every reason to like her in this fight, and she's going to be my pick as well. I do feel pretty confident with her at minus 180. Speaking of Vegas, let's take it to Vegas. Let's talk about our prelim card. Let's maybe give them an underdog first. Which underdog are you looking at, or underdogs?
Let me see here. Honestly, man, I'm not even gonna lie, man. Like these prelims, I don't like any of the underdogs on the prelim. I'm not even gonna make up. Yeah, I'm not even gonna make something up.
I agree with that, and I don't think we should force it. So I'm going to completely agree with that. The only potential underdog I thought had a chance when I was looking at these fights was Jonathan Pearce. Again, to your point with Benítez, definitely looked very sharp. Definitely a lot of reasons to like him. But if Pearce can kind of break him mentally, almost the same way he did Kai Kamaka, I can see Pearce kind of pulling it out late in the fight or really grinding out a win. This one could be one of those split decision either way type of fights. And I mean, if the odds are this much in favor of Benítez, that tells me that Pearce has some decent value at plus 175. So that's really going to be the only underdog pick that we provide for this prelim video. Now, in terms of favorite picks, maybe a mini prelim parlay, anything that you're looking at?
Parlay wise, I like Michailidis, Kai Kamaka, Loma Lookboonmee, and Luana Pinheiro.
Yeah, so 4 prelim fights. That'll actually be a plus 326. $100 will get you 426 on that. For our bigger bettors, $250 will return a whopping $1,065. So definitely some big money on the board if you do believe in those 4 favorite picks. If I were to give my favorite picks, I would take Kamaka off of that, and I would let me see here. Yeah, I think I'm going with the same 3 minus Kamaka in terms of how I feel. A smaller parlay, of course, safer card with one less fight on it. $100 will return 268, and $250 will return $670 for our bigger bettors. So definitely some money available on these prelims. Some fights that we feel pretty confident about. As usual, first of all, pay attention to the commentary in all fight predictions that we give. That's where definitely you'll find the most value in following us and in listening to us. And as usual, please help us out with all that algorithmic stuff. Subscribe to the channel, like the video, share the video anywhere that you need to share it with anyone that you feel needs some UFC breakdown and UFC analysis. And comment. Let's have a good conversation in the comments. Who are you feeling on this prelim card? What underdog pick do you have on this prelim? What parlay are you considering for this prelim? Do you want us to get a little bit more in depth with any one fight specifically? As usual, let us know all of that in the comments. In the meantime, let's sign off. I go by the name of Harris. He goes by the name of Zan. This is Boxing MMA Picks, giving you our predictions for the prelims of UFC Fight Night, Reyes versus Prochazka, aka UFC Vegas 25. And as usual, let's get this money.
Let's do it.